Good afternoon. I wanted to make a short video. People suggested I should make shorter videos, like 5 minutes. And I'm cooling off a little bit. I'm outside mowing the lawn. This seemed like a good time. We'll talk about productivity habits today. Some people have been discussing with me, like, they're like, oh, how do you get so much work done, whatever. So I'm going to tell you about the techniques that I use that work for me. You know, this is the kind of subject where you could go on YouTube and watch endless videos and find all kinds of shit. And people say works for them. There's like a whole lot of stuff about Pomodoro and like time blocking and stuff like that, which I mostly don't do at all. Like that's not what I would consider important. I think there's like much more important basic stuff. So especially from the perspective specifically for D&D, for running games, for creating games, for running sessions for your friends, that sort of thing. So we'll just jump into it here. So number one is basically just always be taking notes. So if you're working, you have like a physical job, whatever, you probably have ideas throughout the day. I don't know if you might not have time to stop and like punch in some notes on your phone, but if you do, you should definitely do that because you're going to forget the stuff that you think of. For me personally, I mean, I have a desk job, computer job, so I can always pause for a moment and take some notes on the computer. That's fine. But sometimes I'm in public as well, or going for a walk through the woods, trails. I have an application on my phone called Journey for specifically for note taking. All it is I just enter some notes. That's it. The other solution I'll do is just Discord, like set up a private channel or a message with myself, whatever. Punch in some notes. Just jot down your ideas so that you don't lose them. And you can pile these up over time, and you'll end up with like so much notes and ideas that it's overwhelming. You don't know what to do with them. Some other good tools are Notepad++, and StackEdit, which you can use on a desktop computer, online, on a web browser, or a laptop, whatever. Those are highly recommended. But point number two here is not putting stuff off. If you, for example, suppose that you come up with an idea for a spell, and you have the free time. Just do the work. Write the spell. Like actually just write out what you want it to be. Don't say, okay, I'm going to write a spell later. Or like, oh, I have this idea for like a fire spell, but I haven't figured out the details. I'll figure it out later. If you can just do it right now, just do it. Just do it right now. And this is great. This works for everything, like laundry, for example. You go pull some laundry up out of the basement. I dump it on the bed. Like I just dump it out on the bed because otherwise I know what's going to happen. It's going to be 11 o'clock at night. I'm going to try to go to bed, and there's going to be all this laundry, and I'll be mad. Like I got to put this shit away. So it's like a way to trick myself. I'm going to do this now. I'm going to put this laundry away right now, and then it's done. I don't have to think about it. And forcing yourself into this habit of just doing stuff now instead of later is great. It's a great habit to build. Speaking of which, point number three is specifically about building good habits. So the thing about habits and like forming a habit for when you do things in a day is that you are kind of like outsmarting your body, and your body will prepare itself physically with the right, I don't know, mental state and like chemicals in your body, like you're relaxed or you're high energy or whatever you need to be to do a specific thing. So for example, if you always go for a walk at a specific time of day, if you exercise, go for a run, whatever, lift weights, at the same time, like keeping it consistent, like gets your body like prepared. You do this with chores, you can do this with writing, and this is why it's always a good idea to do these things every day, even if you're not feeling it. Do them even a little bit, like it doesn't have to be perfect. But keeping up with them as much as possible. And sometimes you are going to miss, and it's fine. Don't worry about it. If you really have to miss, just pick it up again the next day. That's common advice. Honestly, now that I'm giving these all these major pieces of advice, I'm like, man, I've heard all this shit before, and it sounds like bullshit. Like I can't do that, but it actually does work. And if it just takes time, and like it's something you just have to work at like every day. So somebody asked me about like how I'm able to do something like ransack, and it's like, well, I'm over 30. It took me that long. Like it took me, and that's not to say that I wasn't getting things done or being very, very productive in my 20s or even in my teenage years, but getting to the point where you can truly do whatever you want, it really does take time, and it's habits you do have to build up over years and decades, which is completely fine. This is just be better every day. It's pretty rad, honestly. You should totally do that and celebrate your small victories. But anyway, that's a bit of a digression. Point number four here is just about to-do lists. And you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, but maybe keeping a separate short-term and a long-term to-do list is great, so that it's more manageable. You can keep your eyes on the prize. Uh, days, plan for days, weeks, months. Sometimes even a to-do list for like a specific day. Like I have a specific. I want to get a bunch of housework done. I want to get a bunch of writing done. Whatever. I'm gonna make a list for myself of like by the hour. I've done that before. And then in terms of those longer term to do lists for something like the next couple of months or even a year, those are things where you want to revisit them and think about them. Like, should I reprioritize? And there's sort of an odd thing here where like the longer term one, the 12 months, you should try to make it successful. Like this is what it's actually going to be, and then within that reprioritize by cutting scope of certain things. Like, well, I'll never get this dungeon done. I'm going to cut a floor here or whatever, that kind of thing. But you certainly don't want to end up making yourself worry too much about things that aren't important with to-do lists. But having them is nice, and I certainly use a ton of them. And then number 5 is setting limits to essentially practice. So, for example, it's like, okay, I'm going to write a dungeon. What can I accomplish in one day? In just one day, I'm going to write whatever I can in one day. That'll be my dungeon. And then, if you feel like, oh, I'm not going to get this done or whatever, there's problems, remove some rooms, remove some monsters, remove scope, whatever it takes to get down to something that you finished in a day. It doesn't have to be good. Whatever, like if you screw it up completely and you fail and you don't really achieve the goal at all, that's also fine. You got practice in. It's the same. I mean, that's literally like, feel like people don't understand practice in the context of D&D, because when you're learning an instrument, for example, or learning a sport or a game, you're as like a player, you're going to screw it up. You're going to screw it up like a bunch at the beginning. This. This is how it always works. So you do it, you screw it up, you get better over time, and you keep doing it even though you're bad at the beginning. You're bad. It's fine. The same thing applies on the other side with writing. You write a dungeon, it's bad, whatever. Maybe it's runnable, maybe it's not. At a certain point, you do need to run them though, so you can't practice forever. You have to kind of like learning an instrument. You have to play in front of people. Practicing a sport, you might practice shooting hoops for basketball at the park or in your driveway or whatever. But you do want to put those skills to use at some point, playing against other people, presumably. I think that's a lot more fun. Same thing as with writing, with your dungeons. You want to actually have people play them. So you do need to eventually decide, okay, this is good enough, I'm going to run something. But, the first, it's sort of funny because like I wrote Vault of the Warlord in, I don't know, a few days or a week. And then I ran it for my friends and I iterated on it and improved on it. And I feel like that's still one of the best things I've ever made. I think it's easy to get too, into your own head with what you need to do and what you need to accomplish. So setting those limits on yourself to say, okay, I'm only going to give myself this much time, or I'm only going to use these certain books or certain resources to make this happen. The limits are great to try to get something actually done. Yeah. So anyway, those are the 5 things. Just to reiterate, always be taking notes. If you're in public, you can take notes on your phone. Don't put stuff off. Is number 2. If you can do it now, just do it. Just do the work right now. If number 3 is building habits, so just doing the same thing consistently, so that you physically become ingrained into your muscle memory, like you're going to do this stuff. 4 is to-do lists. You want probably short-term ones and long-term ones. And number 5 is just setting limits on what you're allowed to do. Artificial limits, constraints on your writing or whatever. So anyway, that's my attempt at a short video. I don't know if this is interesting. I'm going to upload it either way, but enjoy. I'm going to go back to mowing the lawn.